Hello, my friends, and happy Friday! Today is April the 2nd, and this is the 39th edition of Book Fun Friday. As always, welcome. I'm so happy you're here. So, this is actually spring break week for me, and one of the things that I like to do on spring break is to read a book or two. Except I'm not reading a young adult book this week. I actually decided to read an adult novel. Imagine that. And that novel, which I'm so excited to talk to y'all about today, is titled, oh gosh, that beautiful cover. It's titled The Four Winds, and it's written by the author Kristin. Now, I think you can see how thick this book is. It's about 450 pages long. This book is so good. I read it in 2 days. I could not put it down. It is that good. So let me tell you about it. This book is actually considered historical fiction. I love historical fiction. And it's set in the time period between the early 1920s. It starts out in Texas and it arcs over to the mid 1930s, goes from Texas to California. The protagonist of this novel, when it starts out, is a young woman named Elsa. And Elsa is from a prominent, well-to-do Texas family, which should make Elsa's life really easy, except Elsa is 25 and unmarried. And for her social class at this time, that just makes her a pariah. She is a spinster. She is this old maid person. People in society they make her feel really, really bad about the fact that she's unmarried at 25. And on top of that, poor thing, her family makes her feel really bad about that as well. So she's having to contend with disappointing all of these people in her life, including her family, who have just rejected her wholesale because here she is, 25 and unmarried. Well, when the book starts very early on, Elsa's decided that she's going to go out one night and she is going to see what she can do about changing her life. And she bravely sets out and she meets a young man when she goes out that night. And very quickly, she and this young man, his name is Rafi, fall into a relationship. And very quickly thereafter, Elsa finds that she is pregnant. Well, when her parents discover that she's pregnant, they are done with her. They pack a suitcase, they put her in the car, they drive her to Rafi's house where he lives with his parents, and they put her out and basically say, here you go, she is your problem now, and they dump her. Her family completely abandons her, just walks away from her. Well, Rafi decides to step up, do the right thing, and he marries Elsa and brings her into his home where she is completely embraced and loved and accepted by his parents. Now, his parents are Italian immigrants who are farmers. They tend to garden. They take care of animals. They know how to grow things and can things and store things. And they teach Elsa all of these things. And Elsa absolutely falls in love with this life. She loves the land. She loves the farm animals. She loves tending the garden. She loves cooking food. She loves all the things that they love and completely immerses herself in their life. She doesn't have the best relationship with Rafi, but they decided they're going to be married and make their marriage work. They have a couple of children together, a daughter named Loretta and a son named Anthony, who they call Aunt. And they are setting out and proceeding with their life and making the best of it that they can. Except then things start to fail outside of the home. The economy goes bad. There's a terrible drought. There's the Dust Bowl that's happening in the Great Plains that's impacting them there. Farm animals are getting thinner every day and they're dying. They can't, water their garden. They can't things are just falling apart. But Elsa knows if they just stick together as a family, if they just keep trying, if they just keep making the best of it, she believes in her heart that it will all work out. And so she's doing everything in her power to make that so. Except, as if she weren't dealing with enough, one night Rafi, her husband, decides he can't take it anymore. And in the middle of the night, he packs a suitcase and he walks away. He abandons her. He abandons their children. He abandons his parents. He walks away from all of that. So now on top of everything else that's happening, Elsa now has to contend with the fact that her husband has abandoned her as well. He's just walked away. Well, they've heard that there are jobs in California. If you can make it to California, you can make it in California. And after a lot of thought and conversation, Elsa's in-laws give her their blessing, their encouragement. Elsa decides to take her two little kids, they're little at the time, and set out to go to California and see if in any way they can make a better life there. Elsa doesn't want to go, but she's desperate. She is a parent, a single parent now. Remember, her husband has abandoned her, who has she's made up her mind that she has to do whatever it takes to make a life for her children, to make sure her children have food to eat, to make sure her children have some place to live, that they have some kind of future. She's willing to sacrifice and do whatever in order to make that happen. So she loads up the car with the provisions that they have, the little bit of money they have with the kids, and they set out. The journey is hard, it is long, it is scary, but Elsa is determined. And honestly, she's more scared of things getting to the point where she can't feed her children and she loses her children. That's her biggest fear. And so when she finally makes it to California, she thinks everything is going to be okay. It's not okay. It's hard. She and the kids end up living in a tent camp beside a ditch with water that is so putrid that they have to strain it and boil it before they can do anything with it. But they're there, and they're making it work. And Elsa gets work as a farmhand. She picks cotton all day in the sun. It's awful. It's grueling physical work, but it's also grueling on her heart, knowing the struggle that they're going through, knowing the hard times that her kids are facing. So I'm going to share a passage here, maybe two passages here at a certain point in the story. Now, if you're watching this and you're a parent, what I'd like for you to do, this first part that I'm going to read, I'd love for you to filter this through the lens of a parent. What would you do? What would you withstand? What would you risk for your kids? In November, when the weather turned blessedly cool and the last of the cotton had been picked, Elsa's metal cash box was stuffed with dollar bills. She had stocked up on food, bought bags of flour and rice and beans and sugar, as well as cans of milk and some smoked bacon. There was no refrigeration at the camp, no ice, so she learned to cook in a new way. Everything came from bags or cans. No fresh pasta or sun-dried tomatoes, no homemade baked bread or nutty flavored olive oil. The kids had learned to love pork and beans doctored with corn syrup, and chipped beef on toast, and hot dogs cooked over an open fire, and saltine crackers fried in oil and sprinkled with sugar. American food, Loretta called it. Elsa tried to hold back as much as she could for the winter, but after so many months of deprivation, she found her children's joy at supper time and their full bellies to be her undoing. Many of the camp's inhabitants had moved on, looking for an extra few days' work in fields farther away, but Elsa had decided to stay put. It was time for Loretta to be back in school. On this Saturday morning, Elsa got out of bed and swept the tent's dirt floor. She did not know how it was possible, but dirt seemed to grow overnight, in the dark, like mushrooms. She swept the debris outside and opened the tent flaps to let in the fresh air. Outside, a layer of cool gray fog lay over the camp, blurring the sea of tents. She pulled out an old newspaper from the salvaged fruit box where they stored every scrap of paper they could find, and she read the local news as the coffee brewed. The aroma brought Loretta stumbling out of the tent, her dark hair a snarl of tangles, her bangs a fringe well past her jawline. "You let me sleep," she growled. "No work today," Elsa said. "You start school on Monday." Loretta poured herself a cup of coffee. She pulled a bucket closer to the stove and sat down on it. "I'd rather pick cotton," she said. Elsa wished she had Rafi's gift for words, his eloquent way of shaping a dream. Loretta needed a dream now. She needed some spark to relight the fire she'd had before her father's abandonment and before hardship had snuffed it out. Unfortunately, Elsa didn't know much about dreaming, but she knew about school and the hardship that came from not fitting in. "I have an idea," Elsa said. Loretta gave her a skeptical look. "We are going to have breakfast and go somewhere." "My joy is uncontainable," said Loretta. Elsa couldn't help smiling, even as her daughter's hopelessness wounded her. Elsa made a quick breakfast of oatmeal cooked in canned milk and topped with sugar for the kids, and then she hurried them to get dressed. By 9 o'clock, they were headed out from the camp, walking through a brown field draped in a diaphanous gray fog. "Where are we going, Mommy?" Aunt asked, holding her hand. She loved that he still held her hand in public. "To town." "Ooh," Loretta said. "What fun we'll have, standing in line for the few dollars we earned this week." Elsa elbowed her daughter. "No member of the Explorers Club," that's what they called themselves, "the Explorers Club is allowed to be unhappy on a Saturday adventure. New rule." "Who made you president?" Loretta snapped. "I did," Aunt giggled. "Mommy for president. Mommy for president," he chanted, marching on the soft, wet grass. Elsa pressed a hand to her heart. "It is such an honor. Why, I never expected such a thing. A woman president?" Loretta finally laughed, and the mood lifted. They turned onto the main road and walked all the way to Welty. By the time they reached the quaint little town with its cotton ball welcoming sign, the fog had been burned away by a surprising warm sun. The mountains in the distance showed a new layer of snow. The trees along Main Street displayed their autumn finery. "Wait here," Elsa said, outside the Welty Farms office. Inside, she got into line and waited her turn to cash her chit. I don't know if you know what a chit is. It's a slip that indicates how much she is to be paid. And I mentioned, I think, her boss he's basically a criminal, the way he treated his workers. And so you'll see that she earned a certain amount, and then he always skimmed off a portion from the top. So you'll see that here. "Here you go," the man at the desk said, taking her chit worth $20 and giving her $18 in exchange. Elsa rolled the money as tightly as she could, mentally calculating the total of their savings. It seemed like a lot now, but she knew it wouldn't be much by February. But she wasn't going to think of that today. She returned to the street where the children stood beneath a lamppost, waiting. It was one of those sharp as a tack moments when she saw them. Loretta, thin as a chicken bone, in a threadbare dress and shoes that didn't fit, and long, raggedy, grown-out hair. Aunt, scrawny and with dirty hair, no matter how hard Elsa tried to keep him clean, still, thankfully, fitting into second-hand shoes. She forced a smile as she walked out to meet them. Taking Aunt's hand, she headed down Main Street, where the shops were opening for the day. She smelled coffee and freshly baked pastries as she passed the diner, and the familiar smell of baled hay and bags of grain as they passed the feed store. There it was, the destination she'd had in mind when they left the camp this morning. Betty Ann's beauty shop. Elsa had seen the pretty little salon every time she came to town. She had seen well-dressed women coming out with stylish hair. Elsa walked toward the salon. It was housed in an old-fashioned bungalow with a fenced yard out front. Loretta stopped, shook her head. No, Mom. You know how they'll treat us. Elsa knew better than to make another hollow promise. But she also knew that no matter how often you were knocked down, you had to keep getting up. She tightened her hold on Aunt's hand and opened the gate. Loretta wasn't following. Elsa knew it and kept going. Come on, Loretta, be brave, she thought. Elsa and Aunt walked up to the front door, and Elsa opened it. A bell jangled overhead. Inside, the salon filled what had once been the bungalow's parlor. There were 2 pink chairs stationed in front of mirrors. Cords lay snaked on the floor. Framed photographs of movie stars lined the pink walls. A middle-aged woman in a white frock coat stood in the center of the salon, holding a broom. She looked thoroughly, almost stubbornly modern, with waved, chin-length, platinum-dyed hair and pencil-thin eyebrows. Her Clairvaux lips were painted a bright French red. Oh, she said at the sight of them huddled together. Loretta slipped in beside Elsa, took hold of her hand and tugged it. Let's go, Mom. Elsa took a deep breath. This is my daughter, Loretta. She's 13 and about to start school on Monday after a season of picking cotton. She expects to be teased because, well, Loretta groaned beside her. Let me speak to my husband, the beautician said, and she left the room. She's probably calling the police, Loretta said. She'll say we're vagrants, or worse. A few moments later, the woman returned to the beauty parlor and faced them, pulling a comb out of her pocket. I'm Betty Ann, she said, moving toward them, her high heels clicking on the hardwood floor. She came to a stop in front of Loretta. Close, but not too close. Please, Elsa thought, tightening her hold on Loretta's hand, please be kind to my girl. At the same moment, a large man in a brown suit came into the parlor from another room, carrying a big cardboard box. This is my husband, Ned, Betty Ann said. I understand, Elsa said. You and Ned want us to leave. Go back to our kind. Ned pulled his hat off his head. No, ma'am, he said. We came here in 30. It was tough to make a living then, but nothing like it is now. He offered her the box. Here's some coats and sweaters and such. Winter can be cold here. There's a shower in our bathroom, hot water. Why don't y'all help yourselves? A hot shower and new clothes can be a mighty bit of help in hard times. Betty Ann smiled kindly at Loretta. And I see a girl who needs a new hairstyle for her first day of school. Lord knows 13 is hard enough without all this. Betty Ann gave Loretta an apprising look. You're a real beauty, doll. Let me work my magic. And I have another little short part that I'm going to share here. This is after Loretta's gotten her hair done. She decides that she's going to walk out and explore the town. She's got her hair done. She's got on a new dress that was in the box, had a shower, gotten herself all cleaned up. She's feeling really great about herself. So she decides to walk out and see what she can see. Without a glance at Aunt, who was on the floor playing with a toy car, Loretta went outside. Even the air out here smelled different now. She straightened to her full height, realizing all at once how life in the fields had hunched and diminished her. She'd spent months trying to be a cog in a wheel, unseen. No more. She strode confidently forward in the new-to-her dress with its Peter Pan collar. Her scuffed brown shoes hardly bothered her when coupled with lacy white socks. She found the library on Pepper Street, set back from the town on a pretty grass lot with an American flag flapping from a white pole out front. A library! Magic! She opened the door and walked right in, standing tall, the girl she'd been raised to be. A girl who believed in education and dreamed of being a reporter or a novelist. The first thing she noticed was the smell of the books. She inhaled deeply and felt transported for a moment back home in her bedroom, light on, reading. May I help you? Yes, please. I would love to find a book to read. The librarian came out from around the desk. She was a sturdy woman with gray pin curls and black-rimmed glasses. Do you have a library card? No. Loretta was ashamed to admit this. She'd always had a library card in Texas. We are new to the state. Well, the librarian smiled kindly. 13? Yes, ma'am. In school? Yes, ma'am. The librarian nodded. Come with me. She led Loretta through the library stacks to a large wooden student's table that was strewn with newspapers. You can sit here. Let me find you something. Loretta sat down at the oak desk, which had a lamp on it. She couldn't help flicking the light on and on again, marveling at the magic of electricity on demand. The librarian returned with a book. What's your name? Loretta Martinelli. I'm Miss Quisdorf. You can come back for your card, but I'll trust you with this book for now. She set down a worn copy of The Secret of the Old Clock. Loretta touched the book, lifted it to her face, and inhaled the remembered scent that made her think of reading at night. Like a flower that had been sucked dry in a drought and felt the first drop of spring rain, Loretta felt herself revive. Do you have one I could take to my brother? He's 8, and maybe one for my mom? I'll bring them back, I promise. Miss Quisdorf eyed her assessingly and finally smiled. Miss Martinelli, she said, I believe you are my kind of girl. And again, this is titled The Four Winds, and it's written by Kristin. It's an adult novel for a change. Well, guys, thank you as always for watching. I do appreciate you. Continue taking care of yourselves and stay well. And I will see you next Friday for the 40th edition of Book Fun Friday. Bye, everyone.